on to the next part, our panel. And if you've looked at some of the videos from previous years, it was always a full student panel. This year, I thought it was a good idea to sort of have a representation on the faculty side. So, Jason and Katarina have volunteered, voluntold. So let me just do a quick introduction, and then I'm going to turn it over to these guys. But Patrick Lytle, current student in cohort 21, works at Alina. I'll let him tell you what he does at Alina. Katarina, you just met. She went over the statement of commitment. Mike Mertz, as he introduced himself, an alum, cohort 19. Clifton Larson Allen, he's got a very interesting story that I know that he will share with you, his kind of journey through the MBA program. And Jason Padgett, who you will get to know really well very quickly. So the first thing I want to do is just have Patrick kind of kick off the conversation and talk about how his cohort, how they organized themselves. It was interesting, a year ago, he remembers the student panel and the orientation last year, and as soon as it was over, he's like, so Alice, can you send me everybody's, where they're located? And he did a Google map, and, they started to organize themselves in study groups. So he's gonna just talk about that aspect and how important that is, and how they got started. And then it will just all tie in with all the other components of the program, talking about the pace. I think sometimes people are surprised. Each of the sessions, the courses are 9 weeks long. That kind of sounds like a lot of time, but it really isn't. It goes by really, really quickly. So I think both Patrick and Mike can talk about that, as well as from the instructor perspective as well. So, you're on. I will turn it over to you guys. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay. Hi, Patrick Lytle. I'm an operations and quality manager with Metropolitan Heart and Vascular Institute. We offer cardiovascular services in the Northwest Metro, primarily at Mercy, Unity, and Buffalo hospitals, and then 8 clinics in the region. I'm from cohort 21, and as Alice was saying, I remember a year ago sitting actually right where Beth is sitting right now, and listening to the student panel, writing notes furiously. What do you need to do to survive this? Because in some ways it is very much survival. Everyone is quite busy. As I walked in, I heard the tail end of that. Time management is crucial. There were a lot of different things that were talked about at the student panel last year. They kept stressing groups, and so I think about 90% of the people in the room wrote down, form a group right away. And as Alice said, we kind of did that. I built something in Google Maps so everyone could see where everyone was geographically located as soon as we left the room, so we could form groups. And boy, am I glad we did that. Although we didn't exactly form them that way. At the end of this first session, we made groups. We figured out who are 5 to 6 people that are close to us, that are available on days that are similar to us. The people that were coming from quite a distance away formed online groups, and I will tell you, groups are the way you get through this. You lean on them. It kind of hits to what Jason and Katarina already talked about, kind of some of that cohesion, the collaboration. It's really important. It's a distance program, so although you're getting this really intensive period of education now, you're getting the one-on-one time with the professors, having those groups and being able to use them as a sounding board to study together is very important. In some classes, you don't need the group as much. You just have an occasional conversation, but I will tell you there are some classes where you meet every week, 1, 2, 3 hours depending on the week. It sounds like a lot, but it's really important that you do it. I'll just say that. I think the group that I'm in, we are very well balanced. We have 2 providers. We have people from the payer side, people from quality, people from, it's a well-balanced group. So I think that's an important aspect of it. And so I don't want to scare you by saying go find a group right now, but I do think it's an important aspect of it. And so I have some other notes, but I think I'll pass it off now to the rest of the group. Probably came off a little intense here.
Wait until you hear the rest of the panel.
Oh, I can't wait.
I want to say one brief thing about groups, and I do want you to rather hear from a student, because from the professor's perspective, I just talked about some of these things that I think are important. But, and this is, I'm biased, I teach the ethics class, so there are certain things that are important for the success in that class. But they relate to that sort of the group work, getting to know each other, being comfortable with each other. And I would say, yes, it's important to form groups, but try and reach across the groups also, because you're going to get the most out of it, the more diverse perspectives you can take in and appreciate. And for ethics, that's particularly true. Maybe not so much in math, there's one right answer, hopefully, and that's that. But in subjects where you have to discuss and there's multiple different ways to go, the more comfort you can build with each other and the more you can trust each other, the better it will be, because you'll have to share opinions that maybe someone is going to critique. So have your groups, but really try and get to know each other as the whole cohort and trust each other that what you say here is, what happens in St. Thomas stays in St. Thomas. But sometimes that's important, okay? Because learning is sometimes uncomfortable. Some professors are going to make you do things that you're not going to like to do, or you don't necessarily think are important, and we're going to put you in an uncomfortable spot. And I'm sure you remember that from my class. But so you have to trust both the instructors as well as your classmates that your opinion is valued, it's respected, and it's appreciated, and it's very welcome, and it's necessary for good learning. So do speak up. There's always going to be personalities who sort of come right out of the box and they have very strong opinions, and it might be easy to sit back and sort of take that for granted. Don't, because chances are that's not the last word on an issue, and it's not necessarily always the best thing that comes out in first try. So really keep communication flowing across the whole cohort, and trust each other.
Okay. Well, like Alice introduced and I introduced myself earlier, my name is Mike Mertz. And I did survive. Graduated last November with cohort 19. I'll go ahead and I guess give my story because it is a little unique, I think. When I first started the MBA program, I'll even start back earlier. I started off in healthcare as an EMT, critical care technician in the emergency room, probably 12, 13 years ago. Got into organ and tissue donation. I did that for about 8 or 9 years, more on the tissue donation side, where I was actually in the in the operating room doing the procedures. And then moved into more of an administrative role, and that's when I started the program. So coming into the program, I really didn't know what direction I wanted to go. I was very siloed in organ and tissue donation for many, many years. That was my only perspective on healthcare. And so when I started the program, I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to start going through the classes, kind of see what happens, what direction I want to go. And of all things, accounting. With Joe White, you'll all meet Joe and Jen. I work for them both right now, Clifton Larson Allen. For whatever reason, it really grabbed me. It was something I got very interested in. So halfway through the program, I decided I was going to take on the 6 additional accounting classes to sit for the CPA. So, which of the last 2 I'll start in September. So I'm still on my journey, even though I was done with the MBA group. So about halfway through, I actually moved to a part-time position with LifeSource, the company I was working for, and was really going full-time to school and had to make a lot of adjustments there as well. As far as your success, like Patrick had said, form groups, really get to know each other. I think one of the first things we did in cohort 19 is we elected a president, AKA social director, and exchange email addresses, exchange phone numbers, work in groups, and not necessarily, like you had said as well, not necessarily the same group each time. I mean, you are in a room of people from every aspect of the healthcare field. You're going to learn so much. You're going to learn a ton from class, but you're going to learn just as much from each other. Whether that be here at class or, and I'm not saying this jokingly, happy hour. Happy hour will help get you through. It's a time where you can get together, you can talk, it's safe. You know, you're going to laugh together, you're going to cry together, you're going to experience a lot of different things. There was marriages, there was divorces in our cohort, you name it. There's pregnancies with the married people. And, you know, so you're going to go through a lot together over the next couple years. It's going to go by relatively quickly. It's hard to imagine now sitting where you're sitting, but really embrace each other and lean on each other, including the instructors as well. Alice, Jack, everybody's here is great. They're very helpful. To kind of talk about the intensity a little bit, 10 weeks for each class. You're taking 2 at a time. It's going to go by quickly. There's a lot of material. You need to stay on top of it. It's easy to get behind. Again, not to scare you or get too intense, but one of the things that was told to me when I was sitting where you're sitting now is to, you know, try to carve out, you know, whether it be a Sunday or a Saturday, a big chunk of time or, you know, whatever works for you to get through a majority of the reading, because a lot of your work is going to be online. If you aren't starting to participate until, you know, Thursday, Friday, you're really going to miss out on a lot of the stuff that happened earlier on in the week. I always tried to be one of the first that got on the discussion board just because it's so much easier. At that point, you get your initial thoughts out. You don't have to read through 100 other posts to try to decipher, all right, how do I add something to this conversation? So one other thing too about excellence, everybody here is, you're all here for a reason. You want to learn. You came here on your own. Another thing that was told to me was sometimes it's just got to be good enough. Everybody here wants to do their best and strive for perfection, but at this pace, sometimes it's just got to be good enough. So just remember that. I'm sure I'll have more, but continue.
So now I'm curious, who is the president of your cohort, Mike?
Jasmine started out as which
Yeah.
you know her, that
Right.
makes complete
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
I was kind of behind the scenes social coordinator.
Okay, that also makes sense.
Yeah, so accountant, social coordinator,
Right.
but
Natural match.
natural match, exactly. But no, in all seriousness, that was where we really got to know each
Yeah,
other, and
yeah.
and again, you learn a lot from each other, and the connections you'll gain from each other as well is going to be a huge help for that return on investment later through the program. So.
I had these guys last year, so it's interesting to hear the behind the scenes. So I think first, just to pick up on this idea of the groups, you know, from an operational standpoint, I use groups in my class all the time. So I would say it's actually a good idea to start thinking about it while you're here. Because when the class starts in a couple of weeks, it's going to be very intense when we're on campus for those few days. You know, we're going to dive right into material right away and start to get into some casework. And the first case analysis as a group actually starts the first week you're back home. So, you know, starting to think about that and getting it together will be really, really important. But there's technology that facilitates the group work, and you know, we'll spend some time again on the operational side talking about how we do that, how we make it happen, and how we utilize Blackboard to actually help make that process go as smoothly as possible. You know, that being said, there's an individual component to this as well. And particularly in my class, the way I set it up is case leader groups that kind of spark the discussion, and then the individual contribution comes in response to the case leaders. So case leaders can't cover everything in a 5-page, very short report, so it kind of starts the ball rolling, and then it's individual responsibility to get on the discussion board and contribute to it. But it's a different type of conversation than you're used to, because it's not in real time. So, like Mike said, you can get in early in the week before there's 100 posts, or you can get in late in the week after 100 posts. It's almost better to just kind of make some time each day to carve through there, see what's going on, keep on top of things. We can talk more about the nuts and bolts of this when we get to my class in a few weeks, but you know, being on top of the discussion board and having a good understanding of where the discussion is going will help you with your own process of development throughout this program. And that if you feel yourself falling behind in that, we're here. Contact us, get in touch with the faculty who are in charge of that class. Talk to Alice, talk to Jack, talk to Kate. They like to hear the feedback as well, as we're working through this redesign right now. And like I say, the discussion board is a process of personal development for you. Sometimes there's some interesting side discussions that get sparked during the case discussions. These are great, offer you an opportunity to bring new ideas and your own perspectives, your own experience in, and how this can actually facilitate building kind of your knowledge base and cutting across the different parts of the system. At probably a higher level, about the program itself, at the end of the day, this is a business program. It's not a public administration program. It's not a healthcare practitioner program. It's a business program. What does that mean? This is general management blended with some of the functional management, and how does it fit together? Leadership at many different levels in organizations. How do I manage up? How do I manage subordinates? How do I manage across to other people at the same level in the organization doing similar jobs but in different business units within the organization? And particularly in my class, there's a lot of learning through analogy. I can tell you right now, I have no healthcare cases at all in my class. Everything is outside of healthcare in terms of the industry. However, the open discussions that we have are almost entirely focused on articles coming from industries that are within the core of the different parts of the healthcare system. So it gives you an opportunity to kind of practice on the general management skills, looking at different industries, and then when we have the open discussions, now let's take those concepts and dive down, and that's when you can bring your own perspective into the discussion, and that's where kind of connect the two pieces of the learning together and bring the language. So Paul, right? Paul said earlier, how do I bring those two languages together? That's where we're going to try to make those connections. All right? And I think just real briefly, you can also expect, things from us as well. We have expectations of what we, want to see in our course, but also things that you can expect from us. I can tell you up front, we're both research active faculty. That's a big part of our job. So we have to maintain our publications. We can't be on Blackboard 24 hours a day watching the discussion board in real time and responding to comments the moment they come in. I can tell you right now, I cut out 2 hours a day, 10 a.m. to noon, to go over the discussion board and reach out, handle all my emails to students. That doesn't mean don't email me at other times during the day. It just means more than likely you'll hear from me during that block, because that's when I'm responsible for that. And I'm teaching 2 sections of healthcare this fall, so I actually have 2 sections of online to manage plus an evening course. So, some of the expectations on our side is that, we expect a lot out of you, but this is what you can expect from us too. And a lot more of this will come through in my syllabus once it's up, and, you get to see me again in a couple weeks so we can have a good discussion about this when you're here. All right. So, Patrick, were you given some other questions, or are we opening this up?
I just have some general
Yeah.
tips, and we've already hit on most of them. Time management is a huge component. An aspect of time management that I gave thought to, but probably not enough, and didn't have enough conversations with my wife about it, but that work-life balance, like trying to carve out time early in the week or over several days, that is crucial. I started out, I would say, very prepared. I had my time carved out, but as you go along, things just pile on. I've had 2 different positions while I've been in the program in the last year, and so the program gets pushed a little. You have to figure out what your priorities are. For me, it's family, work, school. And so I've had interesting conversations with my wife and family about when I should be working, when I shouldn't, but try to do it early. I mean, it stinks being locked in your house or in a library or wherever it might be when your family's out having fun. So try to get into it early and often. And the conversations are so much more, you get a lot more out of it when you participate early. You get the full concept. It's a rich conversation, whereas what I was doing this last semester was I was stuck, usually on the weekend, trying to catch up. And then you're reading 100 posts. And at the end of the 100 posts, you need to come up with an original idea to contribute. I'll tell you, there are a lot of smart people in the cohort, and after 100 posts, almost every single idea has been well fleshed out. So try to get into it early. I also think that I got a very unique perspective of the healthcare industry by being a part of the cohort. I was only aware of delivery. But since you have a little bit of everything in the cohort, through the conversations, you find out all sorts of things. You find out other things about organizations that are just like yours. I had no idea the Health Partners was doing as much as they are. I'm just so entrenched in my Alina world. So I thought that was really important to kind of get that perspective and then apply everything you learn to work. It's amazing how as you learn the concepts, it just seems to fit naturally into what you're doing. Everyone experienced that. So you're talking about operations, and all of a sudden you're doing an operations project at work, and you can figure out ways to apply those concepts, and everything just pops a little more. A couple of things, though, that we didn't talk about that I think are important is Alice and Kate and Jack will email you and say there are these events coming up, and you might already have a list of the events that are occurring through the fall, the spring, et cetera. They bring in some wonderful speakers. Really try to participate. It'll be coming soon? Okay. Well, you're going to get that list. And when you get the list, really try to be there if you can. It's a great networking opportunity to network with people across the industry as well as St. Thomas alums and current students, faculty. But it brings the course to life even more. I think it's a really important opportunity for everyone to participate if they can. And then there will also be, I think there will be optional WebExes or online sessions that professors put on. And they'll say this is optional, and it really is, because almost all of them are recorded so that you can go back and revisit them. But if you can carve out, an hour or two on a Wednesday night or whatever it might be to attend those, really try to. I think those of us that have tried to attend all of those optional WebExes or online sessions really got quite a bit out of it.
A couple other things that occur to me from an instructor's perspective. You're probably used to in your jobs, you've been successful, and so you've gotten there because you took charge, and maybe now that you're in the student role, it might be a little different, but I encourage you to take charge again, meaning that talk to your professors about, you're a unique group. Every group works a little differently, and so from an instructor's perspective, I try to tailor, how I teach you based on how you guys work. And so there might be certain things that for you as a group, you figure out, well, this really works better for us. Be it either sometimes timing of certain assignments or stuff that's going on. You prefer different kinds of group, but try and take charge. I mean, I've changed things a number of times based on the kind of feedback I've gotten or what worked for a particular group. So don't take the passive role. This is a lot, there's a lot up for grabs and to shape by you, how you want to do things. If there's certain articles or things that are particularly relevant for one of you, you're struggling with certain things at work, bring it in. This is a great time. You have all these people that can help you figure stuff out. So you have a lot of time that you can take up in discussing these things if you bring it up and stay active.
All right, so you've heard enough from us at this point. I think what we'd like to do is, while we do have the folks in the room, especially current alum, current student, and Janessa's here too, so she can contribute to this. We want to ask you guys if you have questions about the program and just in general what's going on here with the program while we still have these guys here this morning, and Janessa will be with us for most of the day too. So open it up for questions at this time. Pressure's on now. Eric.
I have a question. So you talked a lot about the online collaboration. Is there something you'd have changed in the communication strategy between team members that would make it more effective, or things that you struggled with there?
For me, everyone has a different schedule. Everyone is very busy. So sending out an email to your group and then waiting for a response can be quite difficult when you have collaborative projects. So let's say you're writing a 10-page paper with 4 people. It's easy to assign, you take this section, we'll all write it, and then we'll put it together. Well, it's a lot easier said than done, especially by email. If you can get everyone in a room, if possible, or on a phone call, it makes life so much easier. There have been many a time where I've been on a phone call with 3 people and we're waiting for the 4th to chime in, but they haven't because they didn't read their email that we sent the day before saying call in at this time. So reach out by phone if possible, early and often, or in person.
I can add to that too. We found something that was really effective is when we meet with our 2 faculty while we're on campus like you are now, we would know we were going to do group work, for example. You'd figure out what group you're in. You'd all sit down while you're here on campus
Yeah.
and figure out what's our timeline, who's going to do what part, and that's really helpful, especially because you do have a few people that don't live in the state. And so it's things can be done, everything can be done online, like you were saying, like over the internet and emails and things like that, but anything you can do in person when you can do it is so helpful, because then you just get a foot in the door and you get started on it right away.
Yeah, and from a tactical standpoint, so I actually set up groups within our Blackboard system, and the groups then can communicate with each other privately within the system and have a place where they can drop drafts of papers and different sections in, so that you don't have to worry about doing it in real time. Then you can kind of pick up the pieces at different points. So I would even say use Google Documents or something where people can collaborate, and then we can integrate that back in through Blackboard. So that helps with a little bit of the asynchronicity of not all being in Minnesota, let alone in the same state. So that helps with
That
it.
was another question too. Are the
Yep.
groups kind of structured? Do you assign
I don't.
people to groups?
No.
Or, what causes you to migrate to a smaller group as opposed to having a whole cohort? It's just too many people that contribute to an end result.
Yeah, so we kind of had, ours we tried to structure, and then it was very organic in a way. I mean, the group that at least I study in now is very different from the group we started out with. People migrate to other groups, you have cross-group conversations. I don't know, Mike, how yours came together.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to have group projects in every class you have. Sometimes it's going to be mostly individual. It's going to depend on what class it is. As the semesters progressed, we kind of had groups where the same people started working with each other over and over and over again, which was nice in a way because you already knew them very well. You knew your schedules, but again, then you're also missing out on working with other people and getting those other perspectives. So, I think it really boils down to what works for you for those 10 weeks, because it might not work the next 10 weeks. So, I guess that's my perspective, is it was just, you kind of have to go with it sometimes. It's not always going to be the same.
I just want to add 2 cents to this. We're talking about formal groups and forming these groups, but there's a lot of groups that are formed ad hoc.
Right.
And I think Janessa and Mike and Patrick can speak to this. There's a number of people here who have finance backgrounds, there's a number of people who don't have finance backgrounds, a number of people with clinical backgrounds, operation backgrounds, whatever. And I think a lot of groups become ad hoc. It's sort of, how do I work with people? How do I get someone to help us? I don't think, have you had that experience?
Well, I think my impression is I've talked to people in former cohorts too, is every cohort forms a different type of group structure and has a different balance. And you need to know when to reach out to different people. If there's a project that is a finance project and there are 4 finance experts within the cohort, it kind of naturally happens. Yeah, they divvy out and they become kind of the content expert for those groups, and people lean on them. You're gonna, this goes back to the cohesion. You're a cohort. You're gonna kind of become a little family, and you're gonna need to know how and when to lean on someone else for information and for assistance, because there will be a time when you need that help, and there are going to be plenty of times when you're gonna have to go back to the rest of them and say, I actually know how to do this, and I've done it. Let me help guide you.
Let me just follow up on maybe a comment Jason made. You can't be passive. If you wait for all this to be handed to you, you'll be left behind. And I think that's part of the exercise of the cohort, is to jump in, use each other as a resource, use faculty as a resource.
Yeah.
And I would say likewise, if you have a skill that maybe others don't have, throw it out there. People don't always know
Yeah.
that. If you're particularly good, I know a lot of people have expressed some concern about using Excel because they don't do that on a regular basis. If you happen to be very good at that, let people know that, tips and things, and offer to help, because when you offer to help, then later on when there's something you maybe don't know so much about, they can help you. So ask, give, yeah. That's a good question. Kind of going along with that, obviously we have, like, everyone's individual. Do we, does anyone create, like, do you guys ever create like a group email, so I can just do an ad, like cohort 22, and it just sends one mass email out to everyone? So again, if
Yeah.
someone has experience with Excel, they could just, instead of having to look at your list and go.
Yep. Blackboard, which you'll get introduced to, actually has features where you can select individual people that you want to send to, or just the whole cohort. Yep, absolutely, absolutely. A lot of the newest technology is already in place for it. It's just getting up to speed on it.
Well, I think for simplification,
Yep.
you know, it would just be better than just do one shot.
Absolutely.
You know, and-
Yep. Adam, yeah.
It sounds like a lot of the success in groups is dependent on accountability between others. And we probably all had, experience managing others or, using accountability in the workplace. How would you compare that and what strategies are successful in more academic environment you guys are seeing?
I guess excuse me. The cliche answer is communicate, communicate, communicate. Like if you're part of a group and you're going out of town for a business trip, or you have a family gathering that you have to be to, or whatever it is, let your group mates know early that I'm gonna be gone for these 2 days. That happened a few times in my groups where somebody was out of town on business, overseas on business. They just physically couldn't be a part of the group project. So you pick up a little bit more, they pick up more later. Again, it's just sucks is if you've got a group member that doesn't tell you that, and now you're on a phone call, they haven't called in, they haven't responded to their email in a week, and you're like, what's going on? Do we need to do their work for, what's going on? So again, it's just communicate with each other. Like I said, you're gonna pick up somebody else's slack at some point, and they're gonna do the same for you at a later point, so.
And I would say not to speak poorly of anyone, the people that are chronically unable to participate are no longer with the program. I would say from our cohort, it's a natural thing. The people that are here, you all want to be here. You're spending a ridiculous amount of money. It's a huge investment of time. This is 27 months of your life, a lot of money. So you all are going to try hard. I know you are. But the people that, for whatever reason, are having trouble balancing their life, they've taken on too much, they, after a couple semesters, might not be here. We've lost a couple people, incredibly wonderful people. I think everyone is great, but those that couldn't contribute decided to bow out. And so I think now you're into, at least my cohort, everyone who's here is contributing pretty consistently. Not to bring it up bring up a kind of morose thing, but it just happens, there's natural washout.
Yeah. No, that's an important point to bring up, Patrick. I think I've been on all three sides of this, right? So I've been a manager in an organization, managing technicians and other engineers. I have an MBA, so I've been a student in a program like this, and now as a PhD, as a faculty on the other side and getting to see it, there's really not a lot of difference from any of those perspectives as to what you see. And that, frankly, sometimes when you're going to have an issue, just being upfront and communicating it as early as possible with the rest of your group buys you a lot of goodwill down the line. And sometimes it doesn't hurt to have, so we have formal groups and informal groups, and when it is the kind of formal group, I'll drop some business terminology. When we have more of a joint venture than an alliance in place, and there's more of an equity stake on the line, that actually having somebody kind of take control of that and being the one to kind of set the top tasks and deadlines is really, really helpful. And being the one responsible for making sure that assignment gets in when it does. At a very minute level, I can tell you it drives me crazy as an instructor to read an assignment by 5 people that looks like it was by 5 people. Go through the darn thing and make it read like one person actually wrote it. So, it's helpful to have somebody in those kind of formal situations taking charge. Not that it always has to be the same person, but I think you find the same things, in your organizations as well. So a lot of kind of what you're doing already with teams that you work with, very similar in this environment too. Anything to add to that?
No.
No? Okay. Let's keep this going.
What's the graduation rate?
Graduation rate.
87.382.
Jack just calculated that.
That gives me the impression that we've now successfully scared the group. Okay, excellent. Okay.
The graduation rate is about 90%. And I think that to add to Patrick's comment,
Yeah, this is where it
where
fits.
you usually have the most trouble is right off the bat.
Yeah.
And I think what we're hearing, it's not that there's any material that you can't master. I mean, the thing with business education, it's not the content, it's what you do with it that really matters. So it's this application of practice. But I think what the panel is talking about at this point is reaching that balance. You know, you're trying to figure this out. How does this all fit? You say, oh my God, it's Sunday and I haven't done anything. Or I have a paper due yesterday. What happens? And the analogy I use, for those of us that had kind of classical education, we had this wonderful thing called the back row. And you could show up in class, you could be in the back row, and you could wait for the night before, the morning before, and you could do your work. In this particular program, there's no back row. You know, and this is kind of hard. Now, what happens, I think Patrick and Mike can attest to this. Once you get over that and you get into your pace, not so bad. But where the problems come in is up front. And this is where, you know, when should people contact you, Alice?
Just as soon as possible. Now, I mean, if you're within, week 2 or 3 and all of a sudden you realize, my gosh, I haven't been able to get in there and communicate and participate, contact me, contact your instructor, contact me, seriously, week 2 or 3. You get to week 7,
Yeah,
it is
10-week
too late.
course.
And
Massive.
we're used to solving problems. I mean, our job is to get you through this program. I mean,
Right.
we're committed to working with you to get you through it and having your goals met and all that kind of stuff. But once you get behind, it's very, very difficult. We have 1 week between class sessions. 2. And sometimes we get very generous faculty members that say, oh, it'll take a couple of weeks to finish your paper.
Try not to do that, yeah. They can be generous, but you're better to stay on track with the.
But to deal with your question, this is where the problems exist. This is where people, as Patrick says, no, they don't contribute anymore. The people that are there are now contributing. It takes a semester or 2 to get to that.
Yeah. You'll hit your stride early on. Either you'll hit it or you won't. And they are incredibly supportive. All the professors, Jack, Alice, Kate, they want you to succeed. And people have terrible things happen in their lives, deaths, and great things, marriages, people are out of town, and they'll help you get through it. But it is important to
I know, even
communicate
more
early and
so
often.
I'm,
Lived through that one.
Sounds worse
I'm
like a
still being
divorce,
counseled,
really.
Jack, but it is, you will survive, I promise you. Yeah.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah.
How do you prefer students to contact you? Let's say, for example, I don't have a background in business, maybe if I need extra help. So you prefer email, blackboard, phone calls?
Usually just send me an email and then we can set something up. It's going to differ from professor to professor, but I'm here all the time, so it's not too difficult to find. I think the official policy says something, if email contact is made, we have to respond within 24 hours, but usually we're all pretty good about, as long as schedule's conducive to it, getting back fairly quickly, and then just finding the best way to talk. If it's a quick phone call, that's perfect. If you're actually here and you can stop by, pop into my office. I've got a whiteboard, we can talk over things. So that's for me, it's just kind of whatever's most convenient with the time you have, because your time's valuable too. So.
I mean, as you know, it's different with instructor. I prefer you guys to call me. I will give you my cell phone number. I won't answer it if I don't have time, but I'm very long-winded, and if I have the prospect of needing to explain myself in an email, then sometimes I don't answer it. So, no, I do.
Deutsch.
Yes, I am German by nature, so there's lots of ways that I need to explain, and I feel I need to write about this and this. So I'd much rather have you call me, and then we'll chat quickly or not so quickly about it. But, that's my preferred way of communicating. And, sure, I'll answer emails too, because we have this policy, so I'll try to be good, but you know, listen to what the instructor wants, or, you know, you tell them what works for you. I mean, we're really gonna bend over backwards as much as we can to accommodate you and help you as best we can, and so you really just need to talk to us. Yeah, either which way.
Paul?
About, don't wait until late in the week. Is the structure kind of every Monday, or is it assignment, or there's a case to go over, or what? The reason why I'm asking is I kind of carved out some time at the end of the week.
Yep.
Where I've got my clinics.
Yep.
Would it be better to carve that time at the beginning of the week, or, I mean, other people, if they
Yeah.
have laterality in their job?
Yeah, it's going to depend, I think, on the course. So the way I have it set up is we have 2 weeks for each concept. The first week is an open discussion. The second week is the case discussion. And I post the case leader group reports on Monday evening. So the discussion goes for the rest of the week. But after having kind of a failure the first time around with just a purely open discussion, that's when I moved to the case leader group reports. It means even if you're late in the week, and that's when you've carved out your time to discuss it, there are so many issues that are still open, because the difference was, instead of just frankly everyone bombarding on 2 or 3 people bombarding the discussion board on Tuesday and answering the entire question, leaving nothing for anyone else to discuss, I've kind of fed pieces of it, and the case leader groups are also kind of feeding pieces of it that then you can build off of. So it's a lot easier to come into the discussion later in the week and still have, you know, lots of room to discuss issues. Mike was the first group that went through this, so he can actually speak to this a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I
least
thought
with
that
me.
worked fairly well,
Yeah.
the way you did it. I like that. One thing that I just popped into my head that was discussed with us and is true, I think, in every cohort with a discussion board: please don't write a page of information. Be short and concise. Get your idea down and leave it at that, because you will literally have to read, well, I mean, you don't have to read every single one, but you're gonna have to read every single one of everybody's posts. So if you write 2 pages worth of, nobody's gonna read that, you know? So short, concise, to the point, and it never fails.
Yeah.
Somebody still does it
Still does
every
it.
time, the entire 2.5 years.
Maybe they're
But-
German.
But, yeah, just, for the sake of everybody else, you know, keep your posting short and concise.
It's really interesting moving to the, you know, kind of virtual environment to do a discussion of a case. You know, I've been teaching case method for about 8 or 9 years now, and doing it with undergrads and graduate students. When you're in a classroom and you have an hour and a half to do a case, you know, it's a discussion like we're having now, and it bounces around the classroom. When you think about it, you might say 3 sentences, you know? And it's different when you move into that online environment. You feel like you have to type a lot. Well, boy, the contribution might have actually been in the 3 short, succinct sentences that really moved the discussion and got somebody else to say, wow, I didn't think of that before, and then they have a really cool insight, and we build the discussion that way. So you know, as opposed to an hour and a half here, it's spread out over 5 days, but you kind of have to think of it, well, we're still doing the same activity that we would have in an hour and a half. It's a weird mindset even for us, I think, to see it that way.
Can you speak
Erin.
to the culture of willingness of the group, and what's been your experience of people bringing potentially confidential information from their workplace and discussing that as a case study in
Sure.
the course?
At least in our cohort, it happened on a few occasions. You know, I think everybody, again, we're all grown-ups here. If you share that information, from my experience, everybody keeps it to themselves. A lot of times, if you're doing it for an assignment as well, you know, you can let the professor or the instructor know, hey, I'm going to share this with you, but it can't go beyond that, or I'm going to share this with you, but not with the group, because I really can't share it with the group. But there was no issues whatsoever. I never felt uncomfortable sharing something with any of the instructors, so.
That will happen a lot in your policy course.
Right.
This is the second, your second year. But I started hypothetically, and it kind of became sort of a joke, because hypothetically, this happened at my workplace, and these people got in trouble.
Yeah.
And so there's a huge element to, I think, of that, and just every class, but policy in particular. And I think people there's a culture of understanding that doesn't go outside of the classroom. You know, it's all hypothetical, is what I'm
Yes.
saying.
Right.
Yeah. It's a real adventure with the UHG cohort. They all work for the same company, so they all know who they're talking about, right? But it's a two-way street, I think, right? Because you also have to be aware of what you want to share, right? And that you're not concerned about that being shared with the group. But again, like Mike said, just let the instructor know that this is something that you want to post. Because like I say, I have the open discussion in there. So I might seed it with some questions, but for the most part, I'm looking at that as an opportunity for you to bring questions tied to that conceptual material that you want to engage everybody else in. And if you want to keep it kind of proprietary, then exactly the hypothetical. But if you're really after, like, look, we do it this way, what do you guys do, and how could we, engage this using the conceptual material, just let me know about that. Yeah.
Yeah, in ethics, it might get a little bit
That might be a little
delicate
different.
sometimes.
Yeah.
So, again, the trust is really important. But do run it by me if that's something where you have concerns, and we can kind of think about whether we're going to strip out some information or whether that's appropriate to share.
Exactly. Right, so I think we want to take time for one more question because we don't want to get too far behind schedule on lunch. It's Darren, yeah.
Yeah, is there an ideal size for a group? Because if you get too many people,
Yeah.
too few people.
Well, so for my course in particular, we'll do 3 cases. So it works out perfectly. At least right now, there's 27 of you. There will be 9 groups of 3, and on each one of the cases, 3 groups will then be working on the report, and the other 6 groups will be the discussants the following week. That's the formal groups. Now, these informal groups that Patrick is talking about, where like maybe some subject matter experts bounce through, I think those are more like geographic, who's close to each other, and
Yeah, most of them actually ended up chunking out to around 5.
Yeah.
Well, flexing, dropping from 4 to 6 actually. But then in other classes, a lot of our informal groups ended up being our formal partners. And actually 5 seems pretty good. You get a good balance, and then when people are gone for work events or whatever it might be, there's enough there to still function.
some of it's a function of the cohort size as to how big the groups
But
get.
some are, we have some 2-person groups
Yeah.
that do very well.
I would vote 4, but that's just been my personal experience at 4 works really well.
Yeah, ours range from about 4 to 6. Again, it kind of depended on what the particular group purpose was,
Yeah.
but.
Yeah. For me, it's there's the one formal case that you're working on as a group. That's really the only time that the formal group is together. Beyond that, then it's more of the, personal, small, informal groups. Yep. Okay. Well, I hope we didn't monopolize all the time, but you'll have plenty of opportunities to ask us more questions throughout the day and throughout the next couple of weeks when you're here, too. But right now, we want to move on. So it's pictures next, Alice? And IDs.